Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and share this video with your loved ones. Let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We'd love to hear from you. The effects of rising inflation were felt in every corner of the community. Prices for essentials like food, rent, and utilities had skyrocketed, leaving many families unable to make ends meet. What had once been a manageable budget for groceries now barely covered the basics, and for some, it wasn't enough at all. The local homeless shelters, already operating at capacity, were overwhelmed with new faces seeking refuge, families who had never imagined needing such assistance, elderly individuals forced out of their homes, and young children too innocent to fully understand the circumstances that brought them there. Among these shelters was Hope Haven, a modest building tucked away on the edge of the town. Despite its limited space, Hope Haven had become a beacon for those who had nowhere else to turn. Inside, the atmosphere was both somber and hopeful, the walls lined with mismatched blankets and worn-out furniture that had been donated over the years. The staff, led by the compassionate and tireless Ms. Porter, worked around the clock to provide food, warmth, and a sense of dignity to their guests. Yet the challenges were mounting. Donations had slowed as the economic strain touched everyone, and the growing number of residents stretched their resources to the brink. In the midst of this crisis, Barron Trump was visiting the area. Known for his quiet demeanor and thoughtful approach to life, he had been following the news of rising inflation and the toll it was taking on everyday families. Determined to do more than simply watch from afar, he began seeking ways to make a tangible difference. Through a local contact, he learned about Hope Haven and the immense struggles it faced. The stories of parents skipping meals so their children could eat, of elderly residents clutching their few belongings, and of children trying to find joy in the smallest things struck a deep chord in him. Without fanfare or a media entourage, Barron decided to visit Hope Haven himself. He wanted to see the impact firsthand, to understand the struggles of those affected, and to offer any help he could. His arrival was quiet, marked by humility and a genuine desire to listen and learn. When Ms. Porter greeted him at the door, she saw not the figure often portrayed in headlines, but a young man eager to understand and contribute. Barron's presence was unexpected but quickly welcomed as he expressed his intent to support the shelter in any way possible. Inside, the reality of the shelter's challenges came into focus. Every corner was filled, families huddled together, children clutching toys worn from years of use, and individuals doing their best to retain a sense of dignity amid adversity. The weight of their struggles was palpable, but so was their resilience. As Barron walked through Hope Haven, taking in the faces and listening to the quiet hum of life within its walls, he felt a growing determination. This wasn't just a visit, it was the beginning of something meaningful. Rain drizzled steadily as Barron stepped out of the car and approached the entrance to Hope Haven. The modest brick building stood resilient against the gray sky, its lights glowing faintly through fogged windows. Dressed in simple attire, Barron was unaccompanied by any entourage, a deliberate choice. This visit wasn't about spectacle or recognition. It was about understanding the reality faced by the people inside. Ms. Porter, the shelter's director, met him at the door. A seasoned leader, she had seen her share of both generosity and empty promises. Her initial smile was warm yet cautious as she extended her hand. "Welcome to Hope Haven," she said, her tone polite but guarded. She wasn't sure what to expect from such a high-profile visitor. Would this be another fleeting gesture, a symbolic drop-off of supplies, or something more meaningful? "I'm here to help however I can," Barron said simply, meeting her gaze with sincerity. "I'd like to learn more about what you do here and the challenges you're facing." His earnestness caught Ms. Porter off guard, but she nodded, gesturing for him to follow her inside. As Barron stepped through the door, the gravity of the situation struck him. The shelter was crowded, with every available space utilized. Families huddled together on worn-out mats. Elderly individuals rested in chairs with blankets draped over their shoulders, and children played quietly in a corner with toys that had seen better days. The air was filled with a mixture of exhaustion and resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure even the harshest circumstances. Ms. Porter led Barron through the main hall, pointing out various sections of the shelter and explaining its operations. "We try to provide 3 meals a day, a safe place to sleep, and whatever support we can," she said. "But with inflation driving up prices, it's been harder than ever to stretch our resources. Donations have slowed, and the number of people needing help has only grown." As she spoke, Barron listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. He noticed the weariness in her voice, the strain of carrying so much responsibility with limited means. He observed the residents as they interacted with one another, parents offering what little comfort they could to their children, volunteers moving efficiently to serve meals, and individuals finding solace in small, shared moments. One interaction stood out. A young boy, no older than 7, clutched a tattered stuffed animal as he sat beside his mother, who looked tired but determined. The boy glanced up at Barron, offering a shy smile, and Barron felt an immediate connection. He knelt down, asking the boy his name and learning about how he and his mother had ended up at the shelter after losing their home to rising rent costs. As the tour continued, Barron's resolve deepened. This wasn't just a place in need of resources. It was a community of people fighting to survive. He realized then that his visit couldn't end with observation. He needed to act. As Barron continued walking through the shelter, he paused often to meet the eyes of those around him, offering a small smile or a word of encouragement. He didn't rush or act distant, and this seemed to put people at ease. Slowly, residents began to approach him, sharing bits of their stories. An older man, a veteran, spoke about the challenges of transitioning back to civilian life, made even harder by the financial strain brought on by inflation. His words carried the weight of experience and hardship, and Barron listened closely, nodding as the man explained how he hoped to find stable work soon. Nearby, a single mother sat with her 2 children, one in her lap and the other clutching a crayon as he scribbled on a piece of scrap paper. She described how the rising cost of rent had forced her family out of their apartment, leaving them to seek refuge at the shelter. "I'm trying to keep things as normal as I can for them," she said, her voice breaking slightly as she gestured to her kids. "It's hard, but we're getting by, thanks to this place." Barron felt his heart tighten as he took in her words. These weren't abstract stories or numbers in a news report. These were real people, each with unique struggles and aspirations, doing their best to persevere. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a small boy standing quietly near his mother. The boy, around 7 years old, clutched a well-loved stuffed bear that had clearly seen better days. Despite the bear's frayed edges and missing eye, the child held it tightly, as if it were the one constant in a world of uncertainty. Kneeling down, Barron met the boy's gaze. "Hi there," he said softly. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated, then answered, "Alex." Barron smiled. "Nice to meet you, Alex. Is that your bear?" Alex nodded, his grip tightening on the toy. "It's my favorite. I take it everywhere." Barron could see the importance the bear held for Alex, a source of comfort and security in a life that likely felt out of control. As Alex's mother joined the conversation, she explained how they had come to the shelter after being evicted due to rising rent. "It's been tough," she admitted, glancing down at Alex. "But he's been so brave through all of this. He still talks about how he'll have his own room again someday." Barron felt a lump form in his throat. Despite the hardships, Alex's optimism and resilience shone through. He spent more time with Alex and other residents, asking about their dreams and what they needed most. These heartfelt conversations grounded him, reinforcing his belief that this visit wasn't about charity, but about showing genuine care. As he moved on, inspired by the strength he had seen, Barron knew he couldn't just leave things as they were. It was time to act. As the evening drew closer, the atmosphere in the shelter shifted. Residents began lining up in the common area for dinner, their expressions a mix of gratitude and quiet resignation. Barron watched as the volunteers moved efficiently, serving warm meals from behind the long counter in the dining hall. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and asked Ms. Porter, "Can I help?" Surprised but touched by the offer, Ms. Porter handed him an apron. "Of course," she said, her smile genuine. "We could always use an extra pair of hands." Barron slipped the apron over his head and rolled up his sleeves, ready to dive in. His presence behind the counter caught the attention of the residents, many of whom exchanged curious glances. It wasn't every day that someone like Barron Trump served meals at a homeless shelter, but his humble demeanor quickly set people at ease. Working alongside the staff and volunteers, Barron ladled soup into bowls, plated warm rolls, and handed meals to the waiting residents with a kind word for each of them. His interactions were sincere, his tone never rushed, as if he understood that every moment of acknowledgement mattered to the people before him. "How are you doing today?" he asked one elderly man, who nodded appreciatively and replied, "Better now, thanks to this place." A mother carrying a sleeping toddler in her arms offered a soft, "Thank you," and Barron responded with a smile, "It's my pleasure." As the line dwindled, Barron noticed Alex, the young boy he had spoken to earlier, sitting with his mother at a nearby table. He waved at the child, who shyly waved back before returning his attention to his plate. Barron couldn't help but smile at the small moment of connection. After the last meal had been served, he joined the volunteers in clearing tables and cleaning up the kitchen. He worked alongside them without pretense, his actions speaking louder than any words. During a brief break, Barron sat down with Ms. Porter in her small, cluttered office. "What do you need most here?" he asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Ms. Porter sighed, running a hand through her graying hair. "Resources," she said simply. "Food donations, clothing, blankets, medical supplies. We're running low on almost everything. But more than that, we need long-term support. We're doing what we can, but it's hard to keep up with the growing demand." Barron nodded thoughtfully, taking mental notes. "I want to help," he said firmly. "Not just today, but in a way that makes a lasting difference." Ms. Porter looked at him, her expression a mix of hope and disbelief. "Even the smallest bit helps," she said softly. But Barron had no intention of doing the bare minimum. As he returned to the dining hall to play with some of the children, including Alex, while their parents finished eating, he began formulating a plan. The stories he had heard and the resilience he had witnessed deserved more than temporary relief. They deserved a future filled with hope and possibility. The drive back from Hope Haven was a quiet one for Barron. The faces and stories of the people he had met stayed with him, filling his mind with a mix of emotions: sadness for their struggles, admiration for their resilience, and determination to make a real difference. As the shelter disappeared in the distance, Barron pulled out his phone and began drafting messages. This wasn't something he could fix alone, but he knew he had the means and connections to rally support. Over the next few days, Barron dedicated himself to mobilizing resources. He reached out to friends, family, and trusted organizations, sharing the stories of the people he had met and the urgent needs of Hope Haven. He described the overcrowded rooms, the empty shelves in the supply pantry, and the quiet bravery of residents like Alex and his mother. "We can't just look the other way," he wrote in one message. "These are real people, and they need our help." Barron's sincerity struck a chord. His network responded quickly, moved by his first-hand account and willingness to take action. Donations began pouring in: monetary contributions, boxes of clothing and blankets, non-perishable food, and toys for the children. He didn't stop there. Barron contacted professionals in his circle, arranging for doctors and counselors to volunteer their time at Hope Haven, providing much-needed medical checkups and mental health support for the residents. A few days later, the first delivery trucks pulled into the shelter's parking lot, loaded with supplies. Ms. Porter, who had grown accustomed to scraping by with the bare minimum, was stunned as volunteers unloaded crates of food, stacks of bedding, and bags of warm clothing. Tears filled her eyes as she watched the scene unfold. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered when Barron called to check in. "You've given us more than resources. You've given us hope." Inside the shelter, the mood began to shift. Parents smiled as they sorted through boxes of clothes, finding coats and shoes for their children. The kids lit up as they unpacked toys, their laughter echoing through the halls. Medical professionals set up temporary clinics in one of the larger rooms, offering checkups and counseling sessions that brought comfort and reassurance to residents who had gone without care for too long. Barron, ever humble, stayed in close contact with Ms. Porter, ensuring the shelter had everything it needed and following up on the impact of the donations. He didn't seek recognition or applause. His focus remained on the people of Hope Haven. Through his efforts, the shelter not only received immediate relief, but also gained a renewed sense of purpose and strength to continue its mission. What began as a quiet visit turned into a transformative effort, touching the lives of every resident at Hope Haven. Barron's gesture of support was more than a temporary solution. It was a beacon of light in a time of darkness, proving that compassion and action, no matter the scale, could change lives. As word of Barron's visit to Hope Haven spread, it didn't take long for the story to capture the public's attention. Local news outlets were the first to report on his efforts, describing how he had spent hours at the shelter, connecting with residents and rolling up his sleeves to help. The images of him serving meals, playing with children, and listening intently to the residents' stories painted a picture of humility and genuine care. Soon, national media picked up the story, and social media buzzed with posts applauding his actions. The impact was immediate and widespread. Inspired by Barron's example, people from across the country began reaching out to Hope Haven, eager to contribute. Donations poured in: money, food, clothing, and supplies, overwhelming the shelter's modest storage space. Ms. Porter, initially unsure how they would manage the influx, worked tirelessly with volunteers to organize and distribute the resources efficiently. What once felt like an uphill battle to meet basic needs now felt like a turning point. The ripple effect extended beyond Hope Haven. Other shelters in the region began seeing an increase in donations and volunteer support as well. People who had read or heard about Barron's visit felt moved to take action in their own communities, offering their time, money, and skills to help those in need. It was as if his single act of kindness had reignited a collective sense of responsibility and compassion, proving that one person's efforts could inspire a much larger movement. Back at Hope Haven, the atmosphere was unrecognizable from just weeks earlier. Parents who had once worried about how to keep their children warm now had access to coats and blankets. Meals were no longer a scramble to stretch limited ingredients. Instead, the kitchen was stocked with fresh and nutritious food. The children, including Alex, laughed and played with toys they had received from the donations, their joy a stark contrast to the uncertainty they had faced before. For Alex, the changes were profound. The new toys were a source of happiness, but it was the sight of his mother smiling and laughing with other parents that truly warmed his heart. For months, she had carried the weight of their struggles, her worry etched into every line of her face. Now, with the support of the shelter and the community's generosity, a glimmer of hope had returned to her eyes. When Alex saw Barron's name mentioned on the news one evening, he pointed at the screen and said, "That's the man who helped us, Mom." Despite the growing recognition, Barron remained humble. When asked about his efforts, he deflected praise, emphasizing that his actions were a response to the resilience and hope he had witnessed at the shelter. "The real heroes are the people at Hope Haven," he said in an interview. "They've faced unimaginable challenges and still keep going. I just wanted to support their strength and determination." For him, the true success was seeing how a single act of kindness could create a wave of compassion that reached far beyond his initial visit. Weeks after Barron's initial visit, he returned to Hope Haven to see firsthand the changes his efforts had helped bring. The transformation was nothing short of remarkable. What had once been a crowded, underfunded shelter struggling to meet basic needs was now a place of hope and renewal. The once sparse shelves were filled with food, the rooms were warmer and better equipped, and the children had a brighter, more hopeful energy. The shelter's staff, empowered by the resources Barron had rallied, were able to focus on what they did best, caring for the residents, rather than merely trying to keep up with the growing demand. As Barron walked through the shelter, he noticed the change in the air. There was laughter in the halls and a sense of calm where chaos once reigned. Families who had been clinging to hope were now finding stability. Alex, the young boy who had captured Barron's heart during his first visit, was running around the play area, showing off a new toy that had been donated. His mother, seated nearby, was smiling in a way Barron hadn't seen before. The exhaustion in her eyes had been replaced with a spark of optimism. The weight of the past few months seemed to lift from her shoulders, even if only for a moment. Barron took a seat with Alex and some of the other children, encouraging them to dream big. He spoke to them about the importance of believing in themselves, no matter the obstacles they might face. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Even when things seem tough, there's always hope. You can achieve anything you set your mind to." The children listened intently, their faces filled with wonder and possibility. Barron's words were simple, but they resonated deeply with them. For the first time in a long while, they saw a future filled with potential. As the afternoon came to a close, Barron gathered the shelter's staff and residents in the main hall. He thanked them for their strength and resilience, acknowledging how much they had inspired him. "Your courage in the face of adversity has changed me," he said, his voice full of gratitude. "It's not just about what I've done, it's about what you've done. You are the true heroes here." Ms. Porter stood beside him, her eyes glistening with tears as she reflected on the journey. Barron's visit didn't just change Hope Haven, it changed all of us. His kindness sparked something in the community, a wave of generosity that we couldn't have imagined. And for that, we will be forever grateful. As Barron left the shelter that day, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His actions, driven by a simple desire to help, had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the walls of Hope Haven. The story of one person's compassion had inspired countless others to take action, proving that even in the darkest of times, kindness could shine through. The message was clear. No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever without impact. In the face of hardship, the willingness to help, to care, and to give without expectation can light up the world in ways we may never fully understand. And that light, once kindled, has the power to change lives forever. In a world filled with challenges, Barron's journey reminds us that one act of kindness can spark change far beyond what we can imagine. His visit to Hope Haven is proof that compassion and action can truly make a difference. We all have the power to impact lives, no matter how small the gesture. If this story inspired you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting content. We'd love to hear your thoughts. How can we all make a difference in someone's life today? Comment below, and let's start a conversation.